I'm Tara Killingsworth here at the Ivory Thimble in beautiful downtown Lindsborg with my friend Carla Wilson.
Hello.
We are the creators of the Lindsborg Svensk Folkdrakt, which is Swedish for the Lindsborg Swedish folk costume. We designed it and we would like to tell you a little bit about it.
The reason this came about is because Tara came to me and said, the 150th celebration of Lindsborg is coming up and I'd like to do something for the community. Would you partner with me to develop a community Swedish costume? And I just really felt like this is something important. It adds to the sustainability of our living heritage here in town, and it's also a way for us to give our gifts to share our talents and gifts with the community.
Absolutely. So to tell you a little bit about how and why and what we designed, we started with a random Facebook survey. Carla actually put it up and she just asked, what are things that remind you of Lindsborg? List out things. So people listed out different things, the Smoky Valley, Coronado Heights, the brick streets. And then she asked, what are colors that you associate with Lindsborg? And people listed a bunch of different colors. Some of them are yellow, gold, different greens, brick red, dollar red, Swedish blue, blue gray. And those are actually, interestingly enough, the colors that are in the Kirbit painting palette, which Kirbit, correct me if I'm wrong, Kirbit is a Swedish folk art style of painting that is to put blessings on things.
Yeah,
right?
The Kirbit is actually the floral motif that you'll see painted on the dollar horses and in other Swedish folk painting, and it represents God's blessing and protection.
So we thought that was really cool that it worked out that way as well. So we took those colors and implemented them on different pieces of the costume. We decided that pieces in the costume, the pieces that won't change, so the vest, the pants, the skirt, those things that won't have any variations needed to be solid colors because it's hard to continue with one fabric through a length of time because we get a lot of our fabric from overseas. We don't know what they're going to make and we don't know what's going to be available for people to purchase in years to come. So we picked solid colors and different styles of fabrics, linens, cottons, and things. And we used aesthetics from historical design blended with costumes that we've worn in Lindsborg that are Lindsborg Swedish, not actual Swedish folk costume, what we've kind of designated as our own style. We took historical garment styles, so different seam lines like the princess seams that you saw during that time period that people wore. We kind of made the skirt where it had a bustle, things like that. We'll tell you more about that as we come through it, but we wanted to bring all of those things into our design and really use the community's input, but put a little bit of our spin on it.
So I'm going to start off by telling you a little bit about the boys, showcasing the boys in the men's costume. And we'll start with the undergarment for the boys' costume, and it's simply a white shirt. It has a placket of buttons down the front. And the men's shirt style is exactly the same, just in a bigger size. Something unique we did with the youth costumes is we simply added a skirt to the shirt for the girls' sark, and that way it would save mom and dad a little money because they could buy one pattern and make the undergarments for all the children. So that was something we also kept in mind as we tried to make these a little bit more economically feasible for the family. Here we have the boys' vest, and it is an adorable miniature version of the men's, and this was actually fashioned or modeled after not only the time period but a vest that was handed down from generation to generation in Sweden and then to a family here in the U.S. So it has a lot of Swedish heritage. The pockets on the little vest are faux pockets.
Rockets.
Rockets. And you'll see on the men's that they're actual, so dad gets an actual pocket. And then the boys, they also have knickers, and they have a faux front flap. And what I mean by a front flap is on the men's, it literally unbuttons and comes down, and then you unbutton this, and that's how it's typical of like 18 1800
that
style,
time period. Mm-hmm.
that time period of pants. But for little boys, we thought it would be much better if it was elastic waist. They would be easier to get on and off by themselves and in times of emergency. And then, of course, the knickers are always really cute on the young guys. But the men here in town had voiced their opinion that they would like full-length trousers. So the men do have full-length trousers, and the boys have the knickers. Both costumes have a neckerchief. And this was not just an accessory that you simply wore around the costume. You would have used this to keep the dust out. You maybe would have used this to wipe your brow, to gather things. Perhaps you had to bandage your arm for some reason when you were out farming. So the accessories that you see worn with a costume actually had a purpose. They weren't just for show. And then, of course, you always need a little hat if you're going to be out in the sun. And here we have the little boys, and we have a much larger version for the men, and it's quite stylish.
Yes. It goes with everyday wear.
Yeah.
You don't have to be wearing your Swedish
That's
costume.
right. Okay.
So, great job. That's the boys and the men's. I don't have a little girl's costume here with me today, but I will kind of explain it along with the women's costume. So, as in most, or as in typical Swedish costumes, you have a särk, which is the undergarment. I'm not going to take the vest off, but it's this white dress. Oh, okay. Here we go. You have the särk, which is this white dress that goes underneath it. We did a fun little thing that may not be historically a Swedish.
Yes, it is.
Oh, it is. This tie, this is a thing that is used in a lot of Swedish costumes, a lot of Swedish folk costumes. This is a Swedish braid from Sweden, and it is stitched on so that instead of having to button and make buttonholes, you can just tie. So it kind of works with if your wrist ever changes sizes, or if you need to roll up your sleeves because you're working in the field really hard, you have the ability to tie your sleeves. Then we have a vest, which is made out of this beautiful golden yellow. This we chose because of the color of sunflowers in Kansas, and we just thought it would be fun to have it be a big statement of the costume, to have this bright, beautiful golden vest.
Yeah, the blue and yellow is the colors of Sweden.
Yes, and so we picked a blue and yellow braid that has, I'll get close to you, has this lovely floral print on it. We thought that would bring in the colors of Sweden and also the wildflowers of Kansas. So a little bit of extra there. Another undergarment that you would wear with your Swedish costume underneath your särk are bloomers, which are just fun. And you're not supposed to show your bloomers off, but when you got pretty bloomers, sometimes you just gotta.
Yeah, that's right.
You just gotta show them off. So those bloomers would go underneath. You put your särk on. And then before you put your vest on, you would actually put on your skirt.
Which keeps coming in.
Which I think is so fun. I love this design. So this actually, the idea of having these center front princess seams on the skirt came from that time period that our community would have been settled in
1869.
1869. This is also the same style of skirt that Queen Victoria of Sweden wore as her folk costume. Carla had a recreation of it made for herself, and we just thought it was such a flattering line that you had this nice flat front. A lot of women don't like all the fullness that goes on with the skirt with the apron on top. So we thought it'd be nice to have a nice flat front with these beautiful princess seams that brought in that time period and an actual historical costume. It's got a pocket in the front, so you know, when you're out dancing, you got a place to put your keys, not your cell phone. It will fall out of there. Don't put your cell phone in there. And then in the back, it's gathered to kind of give it that bustle effect, again from that time period. And then the fullness is on your booty. And, oh, go ahead.
The hem.
Oh, and the
Special
hem.
The
So
kick
this
hem.
is cool because this is a kick hem. So the idea with this is that you would use a different fabric on the bottom that maybe isn't as nice of a fabric necessarily, but can be replaced. So
More durable.
It's more durable, it has another layer, and it's easier to keep it clean. So we thought that would be authentic to Kansas of that time period.
So actually, as this tatters and gets worn, you simply take this section off and replace it, and you have a whole new skirt.
Yep. So that way, you don't have to buy a whole new skirt, all that fabric. Then, the next piece to your costume would be the apron. So we chose this fun floral fabric because it incorporated all the colors that people came up with. And it also kind of came from the idea of reusing in Kansas.
Flour sacks.
We reuse flour sacks with the printed cotton on them, which is just, I don't know if that's just a Midwest thing, but I like to say that it is, and I think it's a cool Kansas ingenuity that during like the 1920s they're like, we're going to use everything that we got to make clothes. So we thought that was a fun way to bring in a little bit of our Kansas heritage as well. And then it's finished with another Swedish braid. I'll get close to you. From Sweden. So you actually tie it twice. You bring it around once and then tie it again on the side. It keeps it nice and in place. Nice and tight. So the apron. And then you finish off with an accessory of a scarf. So this is kind of the same thing as the men's scarf. Yeah, it would have been something that women would have worn to keep themselves warm or to have another layer, but it also could have been something to tie their hair up. It could have been something to make a tourniquet. It could have been to gather things. It was just another accessory that they could implement into their everyday life as being a settler or being a folk.
And one thing Tara touched on that I kind of skipped over is that she brought into view that we tried the costumes. We wanted the costumes to represent both our American and our Swedish heritage. So although the scarves like that the men wore were they're not only part of the Swedish or European culture, but also the American cowboy. Mm-hmm. And then the buttons that we used on the little girl's vest, the jumper that she hasn't talked about yet, and the buttons that we used on the men's have a buffalo motif. They look like a smashed nickel. So that's because Kansas, the state animal is the buffalo. Yeah.
The old buffalo.
So there you go.
Yeah. So we really kind of, I feel like when we started designing it, we had the thought, what would people have worn as a Swedish folk costume when this land was settled by the immigrants?
Because at the time, this was their daily wear. This wasn't a costume. So
right.
So what was going to be a functional dress for the people here? What fabrics would they have had accessible to them? And just as in Sweden, typically the costumes are made from natural fibers, linen because they grow flax, leather, they have the reindeer, wool, and then if you're in a port city, then you'll have access to silk because of trade. So we try to keep that in mind, but also, as Tara said, here we don't have a weaver here in town who weaves the fabric for our costumes and can consistently produce the same fabric over and over. So we had to go with what was available, but we did try to pick lighter weight, cooler fabric since it's Kansas.
Yeah, and you're going to put lots of layers on, so you're going to be fine. So this is the girl's costume. This is a sketch of it. And it's basically just like Mom's. It's going to be hit about the same length and have all the same things, except you'll notice that she has a faux front with buttons on it, and her little apron is going to button on top. This is actually a jumper. It's not a vest and a skirt. It's a whole combo. So as a little girl, she's in her sark. She gets ready for church. She throws on her jumper, puts her apron on to tighten it up, and puts on her scarf, and she's ready to go. So that's kind of where we went.
The jumper also has the kick hem that can be replaced. But it makes it just makes it a lot easier for a child to get themselves dressed.
Yeah, and
it is styled kind of after the feet sack jumpers. So again, it ties in the history here with the grain meals and the feed sacks.
Yes, and we weren't cheating on our designing by making the little boys like the dads and the little girls like the moms. There is a purpose for that. During that time period, you would have just bought what was at the mercantile. They would have had bolts of fabric and said, here you go, this is what you get for yellow. You'd have gone home, you'd have made your vest, you made your daughter's vest, and you would have gone with it. You wouldn't have worried about making different colors, patterns, styles, all of that. So that was our thinking behind that.
Okay, so through this process, after we designed the costume collection, the Lindsborg Swedish Folk Costume Collection,
Yes.
it was a proclamation. It was
Yes.
actually proclaimed by the mayor as the official city costume. We are the second city in the United States to have a Swedish folk costume. Mora, Minnesota beat us to that.
We thought we could get it.
Yeah. But and then they said, well, now what are you going to do with this? And how is this available to everyone else?
Yes.
And Tara and I were like, oh, well, we really hadn't thought that through. And so then we went on to actually design custom-made patterns and have them printed. And so we have the children's undergarments, we have the little boys, we have the men's dress shirt and work shirt. So there is a shirt that we also have not shown today, and that's the men's work shirt. It is out of the same fabric as the hat. We have the young and the mature men's sizes. And then we have undergarments and the rest of the costume for both the misses and the women's.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
there's quite a few patterns. It was quite the endeavor. I learned a lot from Miss Tara.
I learned a lot from the whole process of printing patterns. I think it was definitely a labor of love. We were happy to do it and give the gift to the community, but when we started, I don't think we understood what it meant. So.
No, and we really, this is not what we want to do when we grow up.
No, we don't want to make patterns for sale. But to get those patterns, you can come into the Ivory Thimble anytime, and we are actually giving them away starting this Midsummers. So Saturday, June 20th, you just come in and pick up your pattern, and you can take it and make your own Lindsborg Swedish folk costume. So I think we covered everything.
Yeah.
We may not have. There's a ton of stories. So if you ever want to catch one of us and chat about it, we'd be happy to share with you.
Absolutely. Or when you buy the patterns and you're home and you run into a snag or you're confused about something, give either one of us a call. We'd be happy to talk you through it.
Absolutely. So yeah, thanks for letting us share with you, and happy Midsummers.